One day before a family trip, my son revealed an incredible truth. 40 guests, but I was left out. John stood in the workshop, surrounded by the comforting scent of wood shavings and fresh paint. It was supposed to be a joyful day, filled with anticipation for the family reunion he had planned for months. A week away from the chaos of work, a chance to reconnect with his estranged family, and more importantly, build memories with 10-year-old Jake. "We have snacks packed and stories to share, right, buddy?" he said, summoning a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But the joy faded when he noticed Jake's fidgeting fingers as he finally spoke. "Dad, there's something I need to tell you." Swallowing hard, John's heart sank. The punchline was elusive, and tears threatened. "The family reunion has 40 people, but you're not on the list." The words hung heavy in the air, electrifying the small space with a bitter dread. A storm of emotions erupted within John, a mixture of anger and confusion. He remembered his father, a beacon of perseverance, striving to keep family bonds intact through trials. Yet here he sat, staring at the shattered pieces of his own family, feelings of betrayal flooding his mind. Why? Why would they exclude him? The air felt sick, each breath weighed down by responsibility, not just to himself, but also to Jake, who clung to his father's reactions like a lifeboat in a tumultuous sea. "Jake," he whispered, his voice betraying in its tremor. Did he teach his son about unity just to have it ripped away like this? He recalled telling Jake about the importance of family gatherings, sharing stories filled with laughter. Guilt clawed at him. Was he failing? Was he building a world for Jake only to watch it crumble? Before he could spiral, Jake's small hand tugged at his sleeve. "Are we still going?" His wide eyes reflected innocence that only amplified John's internal battle. Did he want his son to perceive family as a place of rejection, or should he uphold an ideal of forgiveness despite his own heartache? Should they embrace disappointment or seek connection? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the stars began to dot the evening sky, John felt them both shrinking under the weight of uncertainty. The porch creaked beneath their shifting weight. Perhaps the family gathering was a chance to mend a fractured relationship. Or were they walking into a den of snakes?
Pain surged through him. How could those who were supposed to love him turn their backs with blatant disregard? The decision loomed large, dark clouds edging closer. He blinked away the bittersweet memories and faced Jake, pulse racing as he gauged what would come next. The suitcase lay half-packed, an emblem of his indecision. Would they close the chapter on family with bitterness woven tightly into each stitch? Or would he allow the love for his son to guide them through the chaos? "Jake," he uttered, voice cracking with unvoiced fears. "I don't know what to say." The weight of what it meant to belong pressed down hard, suffocating the air between them like an anchored ship refusing to sail. The flickering hope fought against despair, but days ahead glimmered with questions desperately seeking answers. John sat in the dim light of the workshop, shadows dancing on the walls as his mind raced with thoughts he could barely articulate. Each second felt like an eternity, the echo of Jake's words replaying repeatedly, gnawing at his resolve. How could he face the reality of family rejection, especially when Jake's innocent curiosity held such weight? If they chose to go to the gathering, it would communicate acceptance of behavior that felt profoundly unjust. Concerned for his son, John urged himself to be strong. Wasn't this the moment to demonstrate resilience? But how could he model strength when weakness twisted inside him? He needed to choose wisely, not just for himself, but for Jake, who deserved a father willing to confront pain and disappointment head-on. Breathing deeply, John began pacing the small workshop, hands shoved deep into his pockets. It was a familiar rhythm that usually soothed him during moments of turmoil. Images of family gatherings flashed in his mind, the warmth, the laughter, the stories they would share. But were those memories meant to reassure him or to remind him of what was now absent? "Dad?" Jake's small voice broke through the fog of doubt. "Are we going to see them?" John paused. There was no hiding the choking apprehension behind his smile. Let's talk about it." He sat down next to Jake, the space between them electric with tension. "How do you feel about the reunion?" Jake hesitated, fiddling with a piece of wood carved into a small boat, a project they had worked on together. "I want to see Grandma and Uncle Jim. I miss them." John's heart sank. His son's desire for connection collided sharply with the reality of his exclusion. What if they don't want to see me? The question slipped out before he could catch it, revealing a vulnerability he had been sweating to conceal. "But you're my dad," Jake exclaimed, eyes wide in indignation, as if the idea of excluding him was utterly unfathomable. "Why wouldn't they want to see you?" A profound silence enveloped them, the weight of the question sinking deep into John's consciousness.
What had he done, or what had become of him that would lead his family to exclude him? It gnawed at his self-image as a father and as a man. "Maybe they think I don't belong there anymore, buddy." A sobering reality settled in as he spoke the words aloud. "No way, you should go. You should show them you still care." Jake's passionate plea was innocent yet powerful, a reminder of John's own ambitions in relationships. "Show them I care," John repeated softly, the comment sparking a flicker of determination. What if he could approach this challenge with the same spirit his father had? What if he could confront this pain not as a victim, but as someone willing to take a step back into the arena? "What if we went and I stood up for you?" Jake offered, a sweet hint of defiance in his tone. Imagining himself walking into that room with Jake by his side sent chills racing down John's spine. He realized he had to confront his truth, not cower in its shadow. "Let's go then. We'll go together, and I'll show them who I am now." The mere thought lit a fire inside him, an ignition of purpose directing a course from despair to action. This could be a beginning, not an end. The relationship with his family could be salvaged if he was willing to brave the confrontation of emotions. "Okay, Dad," Jake beamed, unyielding optimism shining through. "You'll show them you're not just their brother, but you're my dad too." As they made their way back inside, John's heart surged with a blend of hope and uncertainty, the fear still lingering but now accompanied by determination. He would go to the reunion, not just as a guest, but as someone ready to reclaim his voice. Yet, as John settled into a restless sleep that night, one question lingered. Would the reunion hold the promise of reconciliation, or reveal unforeseen divisions that might deepen the wounds of the past? The thought loomed like shadows beneath his eyelids, threatening the very peace he longed for. The sun streamed in through the workshop window, illuminating the dust that floated in the air, each particle a reminder of the life John had built but felt increasingly detached from. He ran his fingers over a rough piece of wood he'd selected for their next project, the untouched surface serving as a metaphor for his own unpolished state of being. Although his determination had ignited, a nagging doubt lurked behind the excitement. As he prepared for the family reunion, John found himself grappling with an unexpected question. Who was he beyond the past hurts? What personal attributes could he bring into this situation that would elevate the circumstances beyond just pain and disappointment? Rather than succumbing to apprehension, he sought to transform the gathering into an opportunity for growth. He recalled moments of vulnerability throughout his life, instances where genuine courage was born not from triumph, but from the willing acknowledgement of his flaws.
Just as he taught Jake to embrace mistakes as learning experiences, he now had to practice that lesson himself. "Okay," he murmured, more to himself than Jake, "I need to change my perspective." The next day, he took a long walk through the neighborhood, replaying the various conversations that had led to his estrangement. He let the rhythm of his footsteps guide him through memories and reflections, each step propelling him deeper into understanding. How could he express his pain without alienating those he cared about? What would it take to open a dialogue rather than a monologue of hurt? An idea sparked. John envisioned a heartfelt message he could share, not just a defense of his actions, but a declaration of love. This would be about restorative communication, revealing how his love for his family had endured even in their absence. It struck him as powerful. What if, amidst the tension, he openly acknowledged the pain they shared? Back at the workshop, John retrieved another piece of wood, a block that sat neglected in the corner. As he shaped it with his tools, he constructed a metaphorical bridge, one formed from his words rather than timber. Stripped of the weight of judgment, this bridge would serve as a connection to his family, a way to navigate through the past towards potential reconciliation. "Dad, are you almost done?" Jake's voice cut through his thoughts like a sharp chisel against wood. "Almost, buddy. Just trying to create something important," he replied, a purposeful smile forming. With Jake's innocent optimism fueling him, John became aware that this was not merely about going forward to face his family. This was a lesson in fostering his own integrity. Despite the doubts that loomed, he was preparing for a reckoning, not with their decision to accept him back, but with his capacity to articulate his truth. As they finished their crafting of the small boat, John could see more than just wood. He envisioned a new direction, one that would carry emotions across the waters of misunderstanding. He had to remain authentic, not just for himself, but to exemplify to Jake the value of vulnerability. The day before the reunion, a sense of urgency mixed with determination settled in his chest. He carefully crafted the speech he intended to share, recognizing that the true test lay not just in the words, but in how he delivered them. Would he be able to convey his intentions with the balance of firmness and tenderness he needed? Later that evening, he stood before the mirror, reciting his carefully chosen phrases, internalizing every sentiment with the weight they carried. As he practiced, he caught a flicker of uncertainty in his own reflection. Who would he be if the family still rejected him? But then, drawing strength from Jake's unyielding support, confidence began to flourish within him. Tomorrow, he decided, would be a new beginning.
But even in that resolve, the question remained, echoing in his mind. Was he prepared to reveal the depths of his heart, or would the experience once again unearth old wounds? The promise of reconciliation weighed heavily upon him, igniting both hope and fear in equal measure. The morning of the reunion arrived, draped in an atmosphere thick with anticipation. John could feel the weight of every moment as he moved through his morning routine. Coffee brewed, birds chirped outside, yet every sound was amplified by the tension coiled within him. Jake's cheerful laughter filled the house, oblivious to the storm of emotions swirling in his father's mind. As John glanced at his watch, time seemed to slip through his fingers, an anxious reminder that the reunion was not merely an event, it was the crucible in which he would either dissolve or emerge renewed. He steeled himself, knowing he could not retreat into the shadows of past mistakes. Instead, he focused on maintaining clarity about his intent, his message, and most importantly, his heart. Once in the car, he looked at Jake in the rearview mirror, his son's eager eyes sparkling with excitement. It struck John then. This day was not just about him confronting his family. It was also about modeling resilience for Jake. What John feared most was not rejection, but the notion that his son might someday carry that fear too. He couldn't allow that. He had to rise above. "Ready for the big family day?" John asked, forcing himself to meet his son's gaze. "Yeah, I can't wait to play with Cousin Sarah," Jake beamed, innocent and untroubled. John's heart tugged at the sight. Jake's enthusiasm offered a stark reminder of what was at stake. This was about family, love, and the possibility of healing. As they approached the venue, John's mind churned with rehearsed lines and emotional affirmations. The sight of familiar faces flooded over him. A mix of excitement and dread twisted in his stomach. This gathering was a minefield of unresolved issues, old wounds yet to heal, but he was armed with newfound resolve. The moment he stepped out of the car, the air changed. It was thick with laughter and familiar banter, but it also bore the weight of unspoken tension. He stepped forward, each stride a decision to face the ghosts of his past rather than hide. His heart raced as he navigated through the crowd, exchanging handshakes, awkward smiles, avoiding lingering glances from those who knew him all too well. Jake tugged at his hand, pulling him toward the children's area. "Look, Dad, they have a games corner."
The joy in his son's voice was infectious, a beacon guiding John through his trepidation. Despite the laughter surrounding him, John felt a chill creeping in, a voice in the back of his mind mocking his bravery. What if they didn't want to hear his truth? What if all he had hoped for crumbled when faced with reality? A knot in his stomach tightened.
He pushed it down, drawing from the strength he had built in the workshop, the bridge he had imagined. His heart, however, didn't stop racing as he collected himself. Finding a quiet corner for reflection, he took a deep breath. The people around him faded into background noise, and he zeroed in on the moment ahead. Would he have the courage to speak the words crafted with intention? To truly share a part of himself that he had often felt too vulnerable to expose? As he stood there, bracing himself, he noticed a familiar figure approaching, a cousin who had always been a source of both comfort and intimidation. The encounter was about to challenge him in ways he could hardly anticipate. "John," she called out, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk," she said, a mixture of concern and something deeper clouding her eyes. For an instant, his breath caught, and doubt surged within him. The time had come to face not just his family, but the very parts of himself he'd buried deep in an attempt to move forward. He had carved the bridge, but now he was suspended on the precipice, about to cross it. What lay ahead would surely be unpredictable, but John steadied himself against the building tide of vulnerability. As family members gathered closer, he realized this moment would not merely be one of judgment, but one of revelation, for both him and those he had yet to reach. What would he uncover about himself in this intimate unveiling of truths? Just then, Jake's laughter drew him back into the present, a reminder that he was not alone. But even with that thought, the undercurrent of uncertainty loomed larger than ever. Would he have the strength to embrace both the joy and pain tonight would bring? The moment settled, carrying with it the weight of John's choices. His cousin's gaze bore into him, a mixture of compassion and expectation, as if she were reaching for the threads of their shared history to weave something new. The laughter surrounding them faded, the chaos of the gathering dulled, as the reality of his situation crystallized into sharp clarity. This wasn't just a reunion, this was a pivotal chapter in his narrative. "John," she began, her voice low, "I know things have been complicated between you and the family." Her words created a visceral reaction. Complicated felt like an understatement, a euphemism for a history tinged with misunderstandings and hidden resentments. He could feel the tension coiling within him as he prepared to confront the unearthed emotions that had been festering beneath the surface. "I've been thinking," she continued, "about how we can support each other moving forward. It's just, we can't keep ignoring what's happened." 1,000 thoughts surged through John's mind. Support? Wasn't that what he had been craving all along? But with support came vulnerability, and in that realm he felt as if he were teetering on the edge of a precipice. Just how much could he share? How much was he ready to reveal? He swallowed hard, weighing his options, grappling with the familiar impulse to shield himself with silence. But Jake's laughter floated back into his consciousness, a reminder that this time the stakes weren't just his own. The thought of his son witnessing yet another cycle of avoidance made his heart ache. He recognized the shift within him. There was a spark igniting, a realization that his path to authenticity required him to be brave. "Let's talk," he replied, aiming for the steadiness hidden beneath his turbulent emotions. "I think it's time we addressed it." Her expression softened, relief washing across her face. "I'm glad to hear that. We need to." The moment felt monumental, like a pebble dropped in still water, the ripples spreading wider than he expected. As they moved aside from the crowd, John felt the vortex of the family reunion swirl around them, buoying him toward uncharted territory. Finding a secluded area beneath an old oak tree, he sat on a bench, the sun filtering through leaves and casting a golden hue on their faces. A tangible warmth enveloped them, and he welcomed the comforting sensation amidst the storm of thoughts racing through his mind. "What happened between you and Uncle Bill?" she asked, her voice cautiously probing. The inquiry pierced through his defenses.
Here lay the heart of it all, the unresolved tension with Uncle Bill, the familial rifts that had widened over the years. John felt the familiar rush of memories, misunderstandings that spiraled into accusations, words exchanged in anger that morphed into the silence that had defined their relationship. "I never meant for it to be this way," John admitted, his voice strained and tinged with regret. "But I was hurt, and I didn't know how to reach out." His cousin nodded, her eyes reflecting a deep understanding. "We all have feelings that go unvoiced. Maybe it's time for us to be honest with each other. It's dangerous to let silence linger." Dangerous. The word rang true. Silence had allowed misunderstandings to breed, turning love into resentment, connections into fractures. A flicker of determination ignited within him as he realized that acknowledging the hurt was only the first step. "I want to fix this," John said, his voice firmer now. "Not just with Uncle Bill, but with everyone. I want Jake to see that it's okay to face the hard stuff, that it's okay to talk." His cousin's features brightened, an affirmation glimmering in her eyes. "That's the first courageous step, but promise me it won't just be words. Let's make a pact to help each other take action." A pact, an anchor in tumultuous waters. He felt his heart lift as plans began to form in his mind. By speaking out, he could reclaim his narrative, not just for himself, but for Jake too. It was a leap toward healing, a way to model resilience and courage. But beneath the resolve, a niggling doubt remained. Could he really bridge the gaps that time and silence had widened?
Would Uncle Bill be open to reconciliation, or had too much passed? More questions surfaced, a deeper unease creeping in as the conversation turned toward confronting Uncle Bill's family and their hesitations. As they stood to return to the gathering, the weight of transformation felt colossal yet exhilarating. The unpredictability of family dynamics lingered on the horizon, and in that uncertainty, a powerful truth unfurled within him. Approaching change would require unrelenting courage. In the distance, Jake's laughter echoed again, a stark reminder of the stakes at hand. John took a deep breath, resolved to embrace uncertainty as part of this journey toward healing. What revelations awaited him as the confrontation loomed? The answers hovered just out of reach, tantalizingly close, yet still veiled in doubt. The gathering pulsed around him as John fought to steady the tremor in his hands, a physical manifestation of the emotional turbulence swirling within. He hadn't realized how much of his energy had been devoted to maintaining the illusion of control until that moment beneath the oak tree. Each laugh and hug from relatives felt sharper, a reminder of the connections that remained unaddressed. "Let's start with Bill." The words slipped from his lips, almost surprised to hear his own commitment manifesting audibly. The prospect of confronting his uncle felt daunting, like standing before an imposing cliff, but he couldn't ignore the yearning for resolution buried deep inside. His cousin looked at him with a mixture of determination and apprehension. "Are you sure about this? It might not go as you hope." Her caution pressed against his resolve, but he needed to challenge that inner voice of fear. "Stagnation hasn't served me well. It's only built resentment. I have a chance to lean into discomfort now for the sake of family." They decided on a plan. John would broach the topic casually, as if they were merely discussing the weather, a technique he had learned at work, finding ways to engage clients before delving into thicker matters. But this was different. This wasn't business. This was intimacy with layers of vulnerability that he could not afford to approach lightly. With the sun beginning to dip low in the sky, they returned to the reunion. The noise of laughter struck him again, a cacophony of joy that felt distant. He searched the assembled faces, and when he spotted Bill, everything within him stilled, the fabric of hope and fear entwined, forming a knot in his gut. "Just breathe," he whispered to himself, the mantra barely audible. He gathered Jake's energy from the sidelines, where his son eagerly engaged with their relatives, blissfully unaware of the currents shifting around his father. In Jake's laughter, John found a lighthouse guiding him through a storm. As the minutes stretched into a slow, syrupy agony, he finally made his way to Uncle Bill. The man was animatedly conversing with another family member, his gestures grandiose. John felt a pang of affection rise. He had loved Bill deeply once, before the cracks had formed. "Uncle Bill," John called out, his voice surprisingly steady. The room seemed to hush for an instant, a collective acknowledgement of the moment. Tension buzzed in the air around them. Bill turned, his smile faltering as he recognized John. "Hey, kiddo," he replied, the warmth of the greeting dulled by something more substantive.
an unspoken history. "Good to see you." John forced a smile, though the weight of honesty pressed heavily on his chest. "Can we talk?" The words felt like stepping into uncharted territory, a delicate dance between hope and dread. Bill's expression shifted, suspicion creasing his brow. "Sure, what's up?" The pain of years past hung between them as they moved aside, John's heart thrumming louder than he'd like to admit. Here was the reckoning, the moment that would determine if the shadows of their history would linger or dissipate. Once they settled in a quieter corner, John took a deep breath, grounding himself in the desire for reconciliation. "I know things have been tense between us," he began cautiously. "There have been misunderstandings, and I think it's time we address them." Bill's eyes narrowed slightly, and John recognized the defensive instinct pulling at him. "What misunderstandings are you talking about?" Bill's tone was icy, and armor against perceived aggression. The knot tightened again in John's gut, the vulnerability threatening to overwhelm him. This was the point of no return. "It's about the things you've said, the things I've said, how we let them fester instead of talking. I guess I came to realize that the silence has hurt us both." For a fleeting moment, John's resolve wavered. Would Bill dismiss him again? Would there be another round of deafening quiet between their hearts? Instead, a flicker of something simmered in Bill's eyes. Was it recognition? Would the veil of time lift just long enough for truth to seep through? The air thickened around them, mirroring John's spiraling thoughts. He had come here thinking he was chasing clarity, but perhaps he was merely grasping at shadows. What if reconciling his past caught fire, igniting something deeper and more unpredictable? As Bill opened his mouth to respond, a clamor erupted from the main gathering. John turned instinctively, heart pounding with an acute awareness that this moment might shatter like glass or reshape everything. "John," a family member called, breathless. "You have to see this. Something just happened with Jake." A daunting realization settled over John like a shroud. Whatever was coming next would either shatter the fragile thread of courage he was weaving or fashion an entirely new tapestry of connection. He stood at the precipice, torn between unfinished business with Uncle Bill and the urgency of a revelation around Jake. What had Jake uncovered? What truth awaited him? John felt the world narrow around him, distilling down to the rhythm of his own heart and the urgency in that family member's voice. He turned back towards Bill, whose expression had morphed into a blend of confusion and irritation. "Look, I really need to—" "We'll finish this later," Bill interrupted, the protective edge in his voice a towering reminder of the barriers built over years, fragments of pleas for understanding reduced to nothing more than static between them. "Right," John noted, guilt pooling in his gut as he pivoted away. The dynamic shifted immediately, from a tense confrontation loaded with potential to a sudden anxiety anchored around his son. Jake could easily weave together his own narrative, one that was unmoored from John's careful plans. He dashed toward the commotion, thoughts crashing against the walls of his mind. The reality of his son's situation could very well redefine his own. Each step felt heavy, because beneath the excitement brewing around Jake, John sensed change, an undeniable shift toward closure he struggled to comprehend. As he reached the gathering, he looked to find Jake encircled by relatives, faces a mix of wonder and concern. His son's hands waved animatedly as he shared something to the rapt audience. The way he commanded their attention sparked a flicker of pride within John, mingled with raw apprehension. In those fleeting seconds of observation, John felt a swell of admiration, followed by the stark realization that he had invested so much energy into his own story, he hadn't considered the chapters unfolding in Jake's life. What if Jake had confronted something within himself that John had yet dared to explore? "What happened?" John called, urgency pulling at him like gravity. Jake's eyes lit up as he spotted his father. "Dad, you won't believe this." He took a deep breath, as if collecting himself. "I overheard Grandma talking about something in the attic. She said there are old letters that show we're related to some famous people." A ripple of laughter and shouts of disbelief circled around them, but John only felt a tightening in his chest. "What letters?" he asked, forcing calm while dread clawed at his insides. Hidden truths, tangles of family lore, they could unravel everything he thought he understood about his lineage. "Some letters saying we're related to some old explorers and artists. She said it could change how we think about our family," Jake exclaimed, exhilaration radiating off him. For a moment, John's mind raced as he leaned into his son's excitement. The canvas of his own worries mingled with a knot of anticipation. Was this a whimsical adventure for Jake, or something far more consequential? The urgency of the moment drew him closer, and the earlier conversation with Bill suddenly faded against the backdrop of this new revelation. What else did Grandma say?
John pressed, eyes darting around the group, scanning for any sign of resistance or doubts. Jake shrugged, all smugness transforming into a familiar uncertainty, matching John's earlier feelings. I think she said there are some stories that we need to hear together, as a family. At that instant, John's heart sank. The implication rolled through him like a dark tide, revealing sandbanks too shallow for harboring dreams. The truth about their family wasn't just an exploration of ancestors. It echoed the disconnections, the silences that had tangled in generations. With every beat of his heart, the moments he'd chosen to confront Bill took on new meaning. It was like encountering a mirror. What had been hidden in the attic had kept him in a limbo of conflict. Now it nudged him toward fresh confrontations, relationships rewritten in honest dialogue. "Jake, let's find those letters together," John said, his voice steady. But inside, he was already plotting how to approach both the hidden family history and the conversation with Bill. Together, they moved toward the attic, where shadows and light clashed, like the unresolved issues from John's past. The layers of their family history began to unfold before him. More than just revelations, these truths had the power to reshape everything he had known. But as they stepped into the dusty, dimly lit space, John felt a chilling thought pierce through the hopeful excitement. What if the truths layered within those letters were harder to unveil than he anticipated? What if they threatened to unravel not only his understanding, but also the fragile relationships he was trying to mend? As John clutched Jake's hand, an urgency ignited within him, driving home the truth he had long evaded. The time had come to uncover the skeletons in the attic, not just to understand his family, but to uncover himself in the process. What else are we about to reveal? He pondered, feeling the answers standing at the edge of discovery, while shadows lurked, ready to illuminate or destroy. The attic door creaked ominously as John and Jake stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of aged wood and dust. Sunbeams sliced through the grimy window, highlighting motes that danced lazily in the stillness. Each beam felt like a spotlight, drawing attention to the neglected corners, filled with the forgotten remnants of a family's stories. But even amidst this quiet chaos, John felt a sense of foreboding. "What do you think we'll find?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper, the thrill of adventure counterbalanced by an unspoken anxiety. "I honestly don't know," John replied, running a hand along the rough wooden beams that held the attic together. The uncertainty gripped him like a vice, compelling him to question if this undertaking would yield more than just old letters. Perhaps it would unearth a family history he wasn't prepared to confront. It could also mean unveiling long-held secrets that had kept him from becoming the father he truly wanted to be. They moved deeper into the shadows, Jake's enthusiasm guiding them to an old, dusty trunk that seemed to breathe mystery. John's fingers hesitated for a moment on the latch. It felt like opening a Pandora's box, ready to unleash truths that could threaten his carefully constructed identity. "Open it," Jake urged, his eyes wide with anticipation, but John felt a cold twist in his gut. "Let's take our time," John said, masking his own trepidation behind a facade of calm. They rummaged through scattered papers, miscellaneous items, and dulled family photographs. Each find seemed innocuous, a collection of forgotten memories, yet doubt gnawed at him. As they sifted through childhood relics, each discovery sparked reflections of his own upbringing, of mischances and unresolved rifts. His relationship with Bill hung over him like an unshakable specter. Every box they opened felt like a direct confrontation with his past, with decisions made that had repercussions beyond his own life.
"This one looks special," Jake exclaimed, pulling out a yellowed envelope brittle with age. John's heart raced. They had stumbled upon one of the infamous letters. "What's it say?" John asked, a mix of excitement and dread filling his voice. Jake carefully slid the letter from its confines and began to read aloud. The words unraveled tales of exploration, adventure, and names long forgotten. They spoke of ancestors who broke barriers, exhibited courage, and shaped destinies. It was a vivid tapestry of ambition and talent, essentially a family legacy that John had been oblivious to. "Can you believe this, Dad?" Jake's voice trembled with awe. "We have a lineage of explorers and artists. We can do anything." But John's insides twisted. Rather than feeling pride, he felt overshadowed by the illustrious history he had no part in. What did that say about John himself? What had he achieved, aside from being a man who found himself so lost in his ambitions he had neglected the bonds of his own family? Jake's excitement dimmed slightly, sensing his father's torment. "It means we're connected to something greater. We're part of a story," he argued, desperation in his tone. But John was wrestling with a pressing realization. He didn't just face the shadows of unfulfilled potential, he had to confront the emotional fractures in his relationships. Each moment spent wrangling with the past would only stack the odds against him if he didn't take action. "Jake, we need to understand what this really means," John implored, his gaze sharpening on his son. "Do you think uncovering these stories will solve our problems?" Jake's silence was the loudest response he could give. They stood suspended in that moment, the dusty attic filled with echoes of family lore, while John was left grappling with truths that were too big to ignore. "Dad, I think we're supposed to face this together, not just read about it," Jake suggested, his tone steady, almost mirroring the adamance John had once shown Bill. The weight of the discovery wove itself intricately between them, deepening John's resolve. They needed to find out not only what lay in these letters, but also how to embrace their legacy and conquer the emotional barriers within their own lives. "All right, let's keep looking," John agreed, driven by a newfound determination. But in the back of his mind, he knew this journey was leading him to a crossroad. What would these revelations ultimately demand of him? And as he looked into Jake's bright eyes, he couldn't help but wonder what other hidden truths awaited them, waiting to ignite confrontation, not just within history, but between father and son. As they delved further into the depths of the attic, John felt the ghosts of the past breathe life into the present. What other stories lingered just out of reach, each a test of their newfound resolve? The attic was beginning to feel like more than a storage space. It was becoming a confrontation zone. Will we also discover the stories of those who fell short? John mused quietly, the question hanging heavy in the air, not just for Jake, but for himself. As the afternoon light shifted, casting elongated shadows across the attic's floor, John felt the oppressive weight of his unresolved past settle deeper within him. Jake's eager search for more letters only amplified the turmoil. Each unopened box held the potential to lift them to new heights or drag John into the depths of despair. "Dad, look here!" Jake exclaimed, breaking the silence, as he unearthed a battered old journal, its spine cracked and pages yellowed from years of neglect. John felt a rush of unease. Such personal artifacts were windows into lives he didn't fully understand, but he couldn't ignore the glimmer of intrigue and fear that tinged Jake's words. "What does it say?" John asked, his heart quickening. Jake flipped it open, scanning the handwriting that danced across the pages. "It's from one of your great-grandfathers. He wrote about his journey to California during the gold rush." There was genuine enthusiasm in his voice, a pure excitement that John longed to share, but felt tenuous about embracing. What did he want out of it? John wondered aloud, more to himself than Jake. He struggled with why a man propelled by ambition seemed always to lose sight of what truly mattered: family. Did that same dangerous ambition run through his own veins? "Dad, look at this!" Jake interrupted, thrusting the journal toward him. He wrote about his family, how they motivated him. But as John scanned the inked passages, he felt an alarming distance.
Motivated had a different meaning for him than it did for his ancestor, who embraced adventure over family ties. The logbooks filled with capabilities unknown to him felt like a mirror reflecting his own insecurities. "What if we're more like them than we think?" Jake said, misreading the pained expression marring John's face as one of contemplation rather than despair. "What if we have their courage?" John shook his head, battling the urge to protect his son from the bitter truth he had come to understand too well. "Jake, the courage they had was rooted in vision and risk. We can't just chase dreams without accountability, without considering how our actions affect those we love." Jake's exuberance faltered. "Then isn't it our responsibility to follow in their footsteps? If they achieved amazing things, can't we too?" John's heartbeat quickened as a revelation struck, a defining question unraveling the tapestry of his own life. Did he even know what he truly wanted? Success had become his destination, but at what cost? Had he sacrificed his relationships in the pursuit of an ambiguous legacy? The weight of the letters and journals bore down on him, splintering his carefully constructed identity. "Let's put the journal down for now," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Let's talk about us. What kind of legacy do you want to create?" He watched as Jake's face morphed from eagerness to contemplation, questioning what success truly meant to them as a family. "Together? Not just with the past?" Jake asked slowly, trying to grasp the deeper intention. "Yes," John affirmed, relief lacing his voice. "What if we created our legacy together, based on understanding and connection?" The notion felt daunting yet exhilarating. The attic, filled with remnants of yesteryears, suddenly transformed into a laboratory for relationship building rather than a courtroom assessing failures. But just then, a creaking sound pulled them from their conversation. John turned, instinctively rising to confront the unexpected. Had something rattled in the shadows, or was it just the house settling? "Do you hear that?" Jake whispered, eyes wide with intrigue. The air shifted, thickening as tension brewed between them. What if this story wasn't merely about their family's past, but a play under the watchful eye of something unknown? The attic had morphed into an arena not only for familial discovery, but risk as well. As they both stood on the precipice, poised between the allure of the past and the disquieting uncertainties of the present, John couldn't shake the feeling that the discovery heralded more than just emotional growth. It hinted at an inevitable confrontation with truths he wasn't ready to face. "Let's go," he said, the urgency pushing him onward. "We need to address what lies beneath all of this, the truths that shake us." With the journal in one hand and Jake's encouraging eyes on him, John felt a growing resolve. It was time for not only revelations, but for action. And as they began to descend the attic stairs, each step resonated with a mix of trepidation and anticipation. What awaited them down that spiral was both an invitation and a threat, a challenge not just to uncover the legacies of the past, but to confront their own identities. "Do you think they're watching us now, Dad?" Jake asked, his voice thick with curiosity and trepidation. The question hung in the air, laced with an unsettling sense of foreboding. What other enigmas awaited them as they stepped into the light beyond the attic? The light of the attic faded behind them as John and Jake ventured back into the sun-kissed hall below, their hearts echoing with the burden of discovery. The atmosphere shifted. It felt charged, pregnant with possibilities, as intensity coiled around them. John could almost feel the weight of generations pressing down upon him, compelling him to seek not just understanding, but resolution. "Jake," he said, gripping the journal tightly, "this isn't just about the past anymore. It's about us, and the legacy we choose to create moving forward." They stepped into the bustling family reunion once again, but now everything seemed different. The laughter reverberated with potential. Brothers and sisters mingled, yet the unanswered questions lay bare in front of John, as stark as the letters they had unearthed. Was he willing to face the truths that loomed not just within his family's history, but inside his own heart? "Dad!"
Jake's voice broke through John's reverie. "Can we go show Grandma what we found?" He hesitated for a beat, then nodded, recognizing that this was as much Jake's journey as his own. "Let's go." Together, they wove through the crowd, and John felt a sense of urgency ignite within him. Each face he passed held a story, memories yet to be uncovered, relationships yet to be mended. Finally, they found Grandma sitting on the porch with a few older relatives, her hands gracefully perched around a glass of lemonade as she laughed. Each chuckle echoed the warmth of family, beckoning John closer with a mixture of nostalgia and apprehension. The weight of gratitude settled in as he approached her with Jake. "Grandma," Jake announced, eyes sparkling, "we found something amazing in the attic. Letters and stories about our family." The excitement in his voice was infectious. Grandma's smile dimmed for just a moment, replaced with a look that spoke volumes. "Oh, dear," she whispered, recognition flickering in her eyes. Not those old stories again. They may not be easy to hear. John met her gaze, resolve strengthening in his chest. They're part of our history, and they shape who we are now. But it's not just about the past. We're choosing to make our own legacy. The words poured out, raw and grounded in the urgency of the moment. Grandma looked taken aback, her expression softening. "You've grown, John," she said, emotion threading through her tone.
But some stories come with pain that lingers. They need to be handled with care. "I understand that now," he replied, conviction pulsing through him. "It's time we talk, not just about the smiles and laughs, but the struggles too. It's time for healing." Jake nodded fervently, biting back excitement as he chimed in. "Can we listen to Grandma's stories together? I want to learn about the explorers, but I also want to learn why some relationships broke down." An illuminating silence enveloped them, and Grandma's brow furrowed before reluctantly breaking into a smile once more. "You're just like your father," she said wistfully, "curious and brave." John's heart swelled with pride as he felt the gravity of what his son was initiating, a shift towards authenticity, towards acknowledging each wound and tear that had marred their family tapestry. As the reunion gradually gravitated towards a circle of shared stories, John grasped the opportunities unfurling around him. He noticed Uncle Bill on the periphery when their eyes locked, a flicker of recognition and understanding passed between them. The time for confrontation had arrived, the moment when silence could no longer act as a bomb disguising the wounds. With Grandma sharing the first tale of hope and adventure, John shifted his gaze to Bill, and when he caught him glancing over, John felt an urge surging within him. Would he conquer the silence that had previously been fortified around their relationship? "Uncle Bill," John called with a steadiness he didn't quite feel, "can we talk today? I want to clear the air between us. No more overlooking." Bill hesitated, a mix of surprise and resistance etching his features. The gathering paused, anticipation palpable in the air. "This is important," John pressed, his heart racing. "Our family history deserves to be honored, and the only way to do it is to face the truths we've avoided." Bill looked around at the faces of family, his defenses wavering. The moment hung, dense with potential, teetering on the edge of resolution. "All right," Bill finally said, his voice steady, despite the weight in the room. "Let's talk." As he moved towards the shaded corner of the porch, John felt a crucial shift take place. Each word exchanged would be a brick removed from the wall that had divided them for too long. Perhaps today marked the beginning of a restoration, not just for him, but also for Jake, for their family legacy. In that charged atmosphere, surrounded by whispers and uncalculated laughter, John acknowledged that this reunion was more than a culmination of years spent apart. It was a forging of connections anew. At long last, he knew they could reshape history side by side, and he would emerge from this gathering not just as a man confronting his family, but as a father reclaiming his role in Jake's story. As he approached the corner where their conversation would begin, the uncertainty relaxed, replaced by a profound sense of clarity.
What we find in those letters, John reflected internally, is not merely the echoes of the past, it is the roadmap that leads us home. Today, there lay an opportunity not only for forgiveness and understanding, but the foundation upon which he and Jake could build their future. Together. And with that thought, he stepped forward, fully embracing the moment, fortified by a new resolve to unlock bonds, forge deeper connections, and create something meaningful where silence once thrived. It was time to reclaim the narrative of his story. As John prepared to engage Bill, within him blossomed the exhilarating promise of transformation, a legacy steeped in lessons learned, challenges overcome, and a family rediscovering the beauty of authentic connection. Now more than ever, he was ready to face what lay ahead without fear, ready to transform not just as an individual, but as a beacon of change for the one who lit his way. Jake. As he began speaking, the room stood still, reflections of the past mingling with the hope of an empowering future. This was only the beginning of their shared journey toward healing and rediscovery. With every word spoken, John understood that the legacy they would craft from that day forward would honor not just their lineage, but also the love unspoken, warming the bonds of family that would guide them through the trials ahead. This was a resolution, a conclusion forged in truth and connection, where every heartbeat pulsed with the promise of fresh beginnings. John's heart settled comfortably in his chest, fueled by a confidence he had never known before. He smiled at Jake in that moment, gratitude flashing between them, recognizing that they were laying the cornerstone of their story, one filled with resilience, authenticity, and a commitment to navigating the complexities of love as a family. This was their moment. It was finally time to shine. And it was time for everyone to witness it. Subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire and touch your heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm that brings you content worth sharing. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this transformation, and share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusive journey of growth and reunion. You need to show your support now more than ever. Don't wait even one more second. Let's spread the power of overcoming together.